Well, hey there, how you doing? It's Simeon here with you. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, we're here in eastern Colorado in the town of Lyman on the Colorado Plains here, where there have been drone sightings for the past few weeks. And this whole area has been subject to fleets of drones flying over the area, mostly at night, all the way up eastern Colorado into western Nebraska, and now we're being told even to central Nebraska. And it appears, according to articles that I'm reading about the subject, even into parts of Kansas. You can see from this map in one of the local Lyman papers, the Lyman Leader, that these little dots here show where these drones have been seen. And if we look at the title of this particular article, it reads, "Officials Still Baffled by Mystery Drones Flying Over a Local Region." Now, if you haven't been following this story, these are not hobbyist drones, the little drones that you and I buy that cost a couple hundred or a few $1,000s. These are big drones, 6 feet wingspan. According to this article, there was a meeting of law enforcement in a town north of here, Brush, where they estimate that these types of drones cost $50,000 each. And as many as 30 of these drones have been operating at any one time over various parts of eastern Colorado, Nebraska. So it's like over $1 million of drones being deployed at once. And here is just one type of drone that the sheriff's departments think is one of the possible types of drones that's being seen. Because these are being seen at night, they're hard to photograph and identify. So if you've been following the story, no one really seems to know who is involved in deploying these drones. This is obviously a big operation with a lot of very sophisticated drone technology, and no one has admitted to being involved so far. No oil and gas companies or electrical utilities. The Air Force bases have been asked. Buckley Air Force Base in Aurora, outside of Denver, not far from here, has denied any involvement. And basically, nobody seems to know what's going on. I've talked to some folks around here, and it's just sort of a big mystery. Just a couple nights ago, a sheriff's deputy saw one of these drones hovering over Lyman for about 90 minutes. We're just off I-70 highway here. And so the governor has been asked, Jared Polis, governor of Colorado. He says he doesn't have any information about it. The FAA came out to the meeting here in Brush and said they don't know who's involved. They can't find any answers either. And the sheriff's department, the interagency task force between the different sheriff's departments in the counties out here. Now these are big, wide open spaces. If you're from another country or haven't been out to eastern Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, these are big, wide open plains for grazing livestock and growing grains and so forth. So these are really big areas with smaller populations. This sheriff's interagency task force can't seem to determine who's doing this. And the residents describe these drones as being kind of creepy. They're loud. They're not small drones, so these sound like a small aircraft, and they've been hovering over homes and towns out here. So I don't know who's involved with this. I'm going to do a show with Buddy on Reality's Edge shortly where we're going to see if he has any information about it. But I don't have any direct information about who is doing this. The interesting thing to me about it is, obviously it could be coming from some sort of special access program in the military to look at some military aspect. There are ICBM silos in northeastern Colorado, Nebraska, and so forth. I don't know if it has to do with that or if it has to do with some sort of criminal activity. I don't know either way. But the interesting thing to me about it is we've, on this channel, we often look at very interesting topics, and we've talked about UFOs quite a bit. And I think there's an assumption that when something like this happens on a mass scale over a period of weeks, that somebody somewhere has to know what's going on, right? I mean, someone in a position of authority. And maybe that's the case here, and they're just not telling us. But if the governor doesn't know, and the FAA doesn't know, and the local sheriff's departments don't know, and they're not lying to us, it just sort of goes to show that there are phenomena that nobody really understands the cause of. And we're not saying that these are paranormal or ET or anything like that. These are drones with, you know, a certain configuration, 6-foot wingspan, maybe bigger. And it's just interesting that in this day and age, we often assume that anything that goes on is going to be easily identifiable. And a lot of skeptics have said about UFOs that, you know, when these things would fly over, somebody has to know what they are. But if we can't even determine the origin of drones, or whoever is doing it obviously isn't saying anything yet, if we can't determine the origins of these drones, I mean, why would anyone expect us to be able to identify something that's potentially extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, interdimensional, as I often talk about, multiverse sort of origins and things? If we can't determine something that's terrestrial, that is only flying a few hundred feet off the ground night after night in large fleets doing very interesting patterns of maneuvers. They talked about grid-like patterns and moving like a kind of a solid door and so forth. I mean, if that can't be identified after a couple weeks, it's no mystery that some of these more esoteric phenomena that we've been looking at for the past 70 or 100 years, the UFO phenomena, it's no mystery that that is something even stranger, even harder to identify. And it's quite possible that, just like in this case of the drones, there are things that we don't understand. And it's just this assumption that I think that we have, that these phenomena are always identifiable, that we should be able to understand them, that somebody knows what's going on. I've often said on this channel that I think in many of these phenomena, no one really understands it, even though in our conspiratorial sort of minds, we'd like to believe that someone understands it. Obviously, for this sort of phenomena, there's a terrestrial explanation, which perhaps we'll get to the bottom of at some point. But it just shows that these phenomena are hard to keep track of, and there is no overarching pattern of detection and control. And if it does exist, whoever controls that, I'm talking about satellite operations and other means of surveillance that the military uses, which are classified. This also could be some sort of classified operation. And if that were to be the case, it would sort of strengthen the side of those researchers who believe that there's sort of another country beyond the US that operates this technology. If we go back to Daniel Inouye and Senate staffer Dick D'Amato, who looked into special access programs and UFOs, those folks told us that there was a second government with its own Air Force and its own Navy and its own military apparatus. And perhaps this sort of phenomena is evidence of that. In other words, that no one that we know in positions of authority can get to the bottom of it, assuming they're telling us the truth. And it really goes to this whole idea we have about our society, that it's, you know, our democratic republic here in the U.S. We have these kind of values we associate with democratic republics. You know, there's kind of a transparency that you can kind of find out what's going on. There's a level of accountability and legality to what happens in our societies, and there's some degree of representation, you know, that our elected representatives can have a process whereby they can get to the truth. But let's say that doesn't exist anymore and there is something else operating. That's just one possibility here. I don't know that that's the case, but it does, you know, raise some possibilities that there are just entities that are beyond what we think of as our government. It's beyond that government's reach to find out about. That's just one possibility here. So either that's the case, that there's some deeper level of government operating that our elected officials don't have access to, and that Dick D'Amato and Daniel Inouye, Senator Inouye from Hawaii, those folks were quite correct when they attempted to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomena. Or it just means that what we think of as our local and regional, even federal government, because the FAA came out here, that they really don't know what's going on either beyond a limited scope. And that means things are just more complex and perhaps a lot more mysterious than we often believe. So that's just one message that I'm getting out of this, and I just thought it'd be interesting to talk to you about it. If you have any ideas, put them in the box below. I always enjoy your comments, and maybe in a few weeks or months we'll find out what this is really all about, or maybe we won't. But anyway, it's an interesting topic. I think it does have ramifications for our sense of how UFOs can be understood or not understood, and that we do have topics that are very challenging, okay? And this is something that's terrestrial, and it seems really challenging. That's what I wanted to say to you. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care for now, and bye.